Greg, thanks for taking the time to speak with the Heroic Gent podcast. You sure belong here, my friend. You were very kind to let me help you tell your story and your very fine book, Conquer Anything, which is really what I want to talk about here. Because I think so many men need the lessons that you put down on paper and conquer anything, and that you've lived through your life. So honestly, I don't know where to begin here with you. We know each other very well, and I know your story. Uh, I'm tempted to have you begin why you joined the military and go through that whole. That might be too much. Why don't we begin with you just telling people, just just as a start, like if you were to meet a man now who looked lost, and you say he's 20 something, and you run into him at some event or wherever, some bar, whatever it's at, and he doesn't know what to do. What advice would you give him? How would you get him started? What down this path to becoming who he really wants to be?
Well, I'm glad you started with an easy one. uh, I think for me, of course, we're aging, we're getting older, and I don't see things the same as I did. Um, and I hope that's natural and normal. I hear it is. For me, it it starts so small. I think with each young man out there, uh, you've got to think of yourself as doing virtuous things, doing the right thing at the right time, at the right place, in the right uniform or clothing, with the right attitude. And and I think we can live in a virtuous way by doing the right thing, and it starts there. And as the components of our daily life add up with that mentality, it's going to naturally lead us to do things with a career or a pattern of behavior that will make a bigger difference over the course of a lifetime. Um, Being led to serve something greater than yourself is always a good thing. But unless you're making the little steps, and look, this may sound silly, but I've been saying it a lot lately, even to audiences. I tell young men everywhere I go, if you want to be respected, show some respect. And it starts with the things that you don't think people see. There's people watching, there are people knowing what we do. Uh, but even more importantly, sometimes when they can't see you, when they can't hear you, what are the decisions you make then? And a parallel in the military was, you know, what do you do in the absence of instructions? And it comes down to accountability, responsibility. And I've been telling young men everywhere, and I'm getting a lot of parental support for this. How do you treat a public restroom? Do you do you spit your gum out in a urinal, or your tobacco pouches in a urinal, knowing someone's going to have to pick that up? Are you wiping your boogers on the wall? Are you are you peeing on the floor? Really? So these are the little things that tick me off as I go through life, because man, if you can't handle those things, and if you don't have enough honor to point yourself in the right direction with stuff like that, then the rest is going downhill. So I'd ask young men everywhere to stop and think about every little thing you do. Is that who you want to be?
So show respect for yourself is then demanding respect. If you're not even respecting yourself, why should someone else respect you? Is that what you're
Because
getting
you're
to
not
there?
being because you're not being respectable.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and and I just think it starts that small. And when you decide to live in a more honorable, heroic way, to be the one that people would count on, it starts with the little things. And how often do we get to prove heroism? Never. Never. You don't get to prove it. And then Frank, here's here's what pisses me off. In the military, I saw guys acting heroic, carrying themselves in heroic ways, and then going into a fetal position and crying when they should be shooting back at the enemy. And so to live in a heroic way, to me, means answering the call in all the little stuff. Open that door for a lady or an elder or anyone. Be courteous and kind. even when you don't feel like it, remember that your bad day doesn't entitle you to screw up anyone else's day. Um,
So are these
Basics.
skills you're building over time, one little step at a time, challenging yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, so that when maybe that time comes when you have to step up and be the hero of the moment, you're ready? Is that what you mean? Is that in par with what you learned as a Green Beret?
I think uh, I think that if we rehearse the basics, um, and I talk about how Murphy lives outside the box. And I think Mr. Murphy has a big stick, and he's waiting to clobber us as soon as we think we're a ninja, and we focus on more advanced stuff when we're not really functional with what's in the box. So rehearsing the little stuff, and if you recall in the book, I talked about how I was insulted that my team sergeant would have us doing dry fire drills, no ammo, just draw, aim, click, recock, reholster, start again, 500 times. But this time I was already a Green Beret, and I was insulted that he would have me do that. And looking back, oh my gosh, I owe so many apologies for that attitude. Because if you don't rehearse from the basics, then that's the stuff we get wrong, and we can't be advanced if we can't handle the basics. And so, what you're saying is, in everyday behavior, rehearse the little things. Get good at being good. Get good at being kind. Practice courtesy, and then it becomes second nature. And so I do see the correlation. I do see what you're saying there, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's not that I'm just now learning how to be courteous or not spit my gum in the toilet. No, it's that I'm learning what it means, and how to explain what it means, and how to describe a life that's valuable and well spent, and not so selfish.
I remember that anecdote of shooting your handgun that many, dry firing that many times, which is a great way to do it. And you use the phrase "smooth is fast, fast is smooth," which I didn't forget because that's perfect because you over and over again creating that good habit, and after a while it does become fast. And as you do other sports, I'm into karate these days, and I found it to be the same way. You learn the technique over and over again, and then you get smooth and it gets fast, and it becomes a good habit.
Yeah, and it's almost an overused phrase now that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. But um, anyone in any discipline would tell you that rehearsal of the basics in slow motion. Even golfers will tell you, where's your thumb positioned on the club? Where are your hands in relation to each other? All these little components have to come together, and you have to get comfortable with them. And if you're trying to be speed racer, you won't have those basic elements, and then you get betrayed by the speed. It'll fail you because you haven't worked in slow motion to accomplish that. So the things I'm talking about, how to develop more purpose in life, I really believe that's where it starts. And if you can be that way each day, then I think you'll be driven to make life choices, career choices that offer you an opportunity to really make a difference. Because that's ultimately what we want to do as men, I believe.
Yeah, a close friend of mine who built his own business, and I respect him greatly. Literally owns his own view in Iowa, thousands of acres. He's done all these things. I'd lost my job right before I went there hunting with him years ago, and he looks at me and he says, "I'm going to give you a piece of advice. You know, very few people take it, but I'm going to give you this piece of advice anyway. Um, every morning, sit down for 30 minutes with no radio, no TV, no one talking to you. Just sit there and think. Just sit there and deeply think about who you are and where you're going." And he says, at first it'll be annoying. You can't still your mind. You can have all these problems. But after a while, day after day, of every 30 minutes every day doing the same thing, you're going to start to see the future. You're going to calm down and you're going to start to see who you should be and where you should go. And you'll start to get steps ahead of where you want to be. And that's how you're going to get to what you really want. It's just that advice has helped me ever since.
Yeah. Um, Maybe part of our problem societally or individually is a nature that tells us that we think we are inherently good, but people around us maybe not so much. And so we're not able to see the good in other people. But I would point out that so many times in my life and in my career, um, like I love to ask people, what does a hero look like? Can anyone tell me what a hero looks like? Um, I I can't. I wouldn't begin to guess because I've been shocked and surprised too many times. It's the opposite of what we think many times. We think a hero is going to be something similar to us or some Hollywood stereotype, and neither have panned out in my experience. And I'll be honest, when Captain Sully landed the plane on the Hudson River, I was expecting some young fighter pilot to come out with mad skills and heroic capabilities. But man, that was an old dude, skinny, looked like he had one foot on a banana peel. He could kick off any time. Is that what we pictured a hero looking like? Not so much, but been surprised so much. And now I know I can look around, and most of us would risk our own life to save anyone else around us, whether we deem them good or bad in the moment.
Well, I'd like
Most
to
of
think
us
that's
would.
true. You really think that's true? This generation tends to point a phone at something when they see something happening instead of getting in there to help. I'm not sure about that anymore. Um, when that
Oh,
really,
that smarts.
yeah,
That smarts. I don't like to see that.
yeah.
I because look, I don't have a lot of pictures from being in combat, and some people do, and they have a lot of pictures. And I wonder, what were the conditions for you that made it possible to be a part-time photographer? Because I remember being very concerned about defense. I remember being very concerned about orchestrated moves in a well rehearsed plan. Um, yeah, just I don't know about the phone thing. It irritates me that there are people who could help and they're not because they're capturing it on film. So you have a valid point there. And maybe that's one of the things a young man could think about going forward. Maybe that's a good place to start. How about don't film it? How about step in and help?
Yeah, absolutely. And you wonder when that moment comes and you are being tested, are you ready? Because so few of us are going to have that opportunity um, to really be tested, or maybe we just miss the opportunities. I'm not really sure which is which. I've only had one. I saved a drowning girl, and I didn't think. I just went, and I did. And I didn't know actually at the time that I'd thrown my phone and keys on the beach when I jumped in the water, but I did. Somehow, some part of my brain did that. And there was a guy standing there, a father with me, and he handed them back to me. And he was very embarrassed because he didn't even think to go, which he still talks to me about. He says, "Why didn't I? You just went, and I didn't go. Why? What was the difference?" I don't know. Is it training? Is it disposition? What was it?
And that's another thing that I mentioned in the book. And I think if you look at a rookie quarterback, um, things are unfolding so fast in front of them. And when I was young, being in the line of work I was in, I remember many times where things would happen fast and something would go wrong. And it was unfolding for me so quickly that I didn't see a possibility to even interact with it. I was still trying to comprehend. But I think with rehearsal and experience and mindset and mental rehearsals, thinking about who we are, what we want to be, how we want to interact with the world around us, I think over time, I started learning more of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be. And that time in a critical moment began to pass more slowly, like I imagine it would have for a Tom Brady, as a seasoned quarterback. He had time to interact with every moving part on the field or decide not to. when a younger quarterback would tell you there was no time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, didn't you train under stress? I remember you telling me that as a medic in the Green Berets, you had to actually wound a pig and then save the pig right there, and then before you actually then went and worked in emergency rooms. Didn't you? You literally dealt with this stuff, didn't you? Training for that stress.
Well, not exactly, but we did live tissue training. And mostly in training, when there's a stopwatch involved, that's a good start, because when you're racing the clock, your heart rate automatically goes up and you become more tense and there's more pressure. And that in no way simulates real world danger, um, or risk, but it's a good start, shooting under stress, performing under stress. And if you routinely apply stress to the things you're rehearsing, then I think time does begin to pass a little more slowly, because the panic factor dissolves a little bit.
Getting used to it over time. I've done a lot of shooting drills that are timed, and I've shot 3-gun competitions that are timed, and you have people watching you, and it's the stopwatch going, and you've got to go and hit those targets, and you're competing, you're trying to beat other people. So that there's a lot of pressure there that you have to learn to control.
But
Yeah.
think of the most minute little mechanisms that you had to adapt mentally and physically to do better under those stresses.
Hmm.
What were some of them?
Yeah. Well, in that case, it's the safe gun skills. Barrel pointed in the right direction, finger off the trigger, you're going to shoot, and all that kind of stuff. That has to be there already instilled in you so that you don't lose it under pressure.
Mm.
I've trained people. I'm sure you've trained people to shoot, and the first thing you do is hand them a plastic gun, and the first thing they're going to do is put their finger on the trigger and point it at you. It's like inevitable every time. Like, and of course that's a worst case. That's a gun. That's a lethal thing. So that's a worst case kind of thing. But I think that's even true with a guy going to do a job interview. He has to take a deep breath, slow himself down, dress a little better than the occasion, which is what I tell my son. Always dress a little better than wherever you're going. People treat you with a little more respect because you're showing respect for yourself. Pause a little when you speak, before you speak, and so on. And there's something about that deep breath. Like I like to shoot sporting clays, and there's something about that deep breath before you say pull for the birds to come. It just helps so much.
It does. There's a mental aspect. It's not just physical rehearsal. Mental rehearsals are everything. And there were times in my career when I was taught something or trained something, and I would complete the course and I would pass, and then I was considered qualified. But I'll tell you something. Uh, Everything seems to be perishable, and so I learned to do mental rehearsals. Like there were things when we started doing close protection stuff where you're armed, but you can't just go to the weapon first. And as a warfighter, it's weapons. That's how you win wars, right? So that's how we trained forever. But then when the close protection comes into it, as any law enforcement officer will tell you, you've got to protect that weapon, and you've got to be able to use your hands effectively. And when I learned certain skills, I would mentally rehearse them while I'm talking to you. Now, I'm not striking you and disabling you, but I'm picturing how it would go down in different scenarios with different people in different environments. And that mental rehearsal sometimes is all you need.
Right. Thinking about your distance to the person you're dealing with. Um, I've talked to officers before. They like to keep their hands in a certain place so they're ready. It doesn't. They don't look self-defensive, but they are self-defensive because their hands are up and ready to do something if they have to. There's all
Yeah.
this thinking that goes before the situation. I'm wondering too. I mean, you train people to be Green Berets as well. Um, the posture that you see from, and I do mean physically, the way they walk and move, but there's something in the bearing and posture of someone who, like you even told me one of your favorite films, that an actor just hit, you could tell what that actor was. They hit it perfectly. The posture, the way they walked, the way they spoke. I mean, is that something that's taught, or is that something that just people learn through other people just watching and you're part of this culture? because it's a manly way that they move that is just becomes inherent to them.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody, and I wouldn't say. Now, I agree with you. Certain people have that swagger about them that's noticeable, but I can't say that person that carries the image the best is necessarily the best operator.
True. Okay. Yeah.
Uh, so yes, now attitude, orientation. Um, my goodness, when I see swagger in someone who wants to accomplish something big, my first thought is maybe they're underestimating the task. I like to see humility, and humility, in my opinion, becomes probably the most important part of leadership.
But if they're overexpressing that manly bravado, they're probably covering something up. Would be my first impulse with that person, which is often proven to be true.
Yeah, and I'm deeply concerned, especially these days, about the correlation between confidence and competence. Some people are supremely confident, but they lack the competence. So they're faking the funk as they go, and they're trying to get other people to drink the Kool-Aid. Our competence should always lead the way, and our confidence should follow, hopefully close behind, but never get ahead of our ability. Um, that's a dangerous thing, but I wouldn't want any young man out there to think that just because they were born, they're great. It doesn't work that way. No, you may have rights, and people may be equal, but talent, not so much.
I think competence is such an important part of being a man. You learn those skills, but if you don't know something, have the balls to say you don't know, and to ask someone for help, and to bring a team together, maybe behind it, an A team. You have those skills. Yeah, competence is a big part of being a man. Yeah, 100% agree.
But Frank, you said it takes big balls to ask for help. That's a well developed perspective. That's something that comes later in life to be able to say that. Because at a younger age, it's not balls, it's vulnerability. It's the fear of being judged. It's the
Yeah, yeah.
uh, you almost have to be willing to not be respected if you ask for help. And that's why most of us, we wind up like a cat in a litter box trying to hide a turd our whole life, cover up our weaknesses so no one sees them. And that injures our ability to develop better competence. And
Well, do you agree? Do you agree with the idea that you should fake it until you make it? I've heard that a lot, and
no,
I'm honestly
nope,
not sure if I do. Okay.
no, I don't like it. I think it's a falsehood, and I think it's dangerous. And if you agreed to be a part of a team and contribute to an effort, why would you fake that? Because if it's your job to move the ball down the field and you're not competent or effective at doing that, then you're betraying the honor it took to agree to the job, and you're betraying the whole team that you agreed to support.
Yeah. Instead, they should be asking, "What is the best way? Let's put a plan together." Or if it's a fast-moving situation, getting out of the way and just helping. At that point, you should be following if you have no idea what to do. Or if you're
But
trying to
it but
fake it
it
out the front, you're gonna cause trouble.
but it takes intimacy to be honest, you know, and people don't want to lend themselves to another person, especially when they see it as a superficial environment. But if we're working together on any project, then I owe it to you to be honest. And we were talking earlier about candor. Candor matters. Um, be honest about what you see, be honest about what you hear, um, and be honest about how you feel.
I remember you telling me about a difference between the special forces and regular military. Is in the special forces that you're trained to think independently. So if you see something, you communicate it to the team, and what you're doing actually might change slightly based on if you planned a certain way, but that's not how it's working out. That every person on the team is thinking instead of a one-way thing maybe with a regular unit. Um, how do you train for that? Is that possible, or is that something you train for in the Green Beret school, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think that's a mindset. Um, no matter where you are, if you're a part of a team, usually the plans and the directives come from higher, and it's your job to carry it out the way you've been told to do. And many times there's no exceptions. It doesn't become a dynamic process. It's even if you fail, you run it into the ground with the plan you've got. And I think it's incumbent upon each person with anything we do to never get dumbed down into this numb existence where we go along with everything. Now, I'm not saying give resistance. No, quite the opposite. Definitely support the plan, support the mission at hand, support your teammates, but have your eyes and ears open and be analytical. Process what you see and hear and be able to contribute somehow. If there's a better way that can be done within the mission parameters, then have yourself in a position to say so. But when we get dumbed down and we just become numb and move forward the way we've been directed with our eyes on the ground, that's a big mistake. We can't afford that.
See that a lot with people. Yeah, and I like the Kipling poem. Keep your head when all others lose and dares. I think that poem "If" just puts it so perfectly. Yeah, you have to keep your head, but also be looking to the team. There's a lot of nuance to that. Being humble, but being strong at the same time. I've been talking to my son about that. How do you be humble? Because I do karate with him. We're in the dojo together, and we have great senseis who, and they have that spirit. They're not braggarts, as people in there often are not at their level or not. They're not braggarts, but they're humble. But when it comes down to sparring with them or whatever, they do this kata or other technique, they do it beautifully and confidently. How do you teach both of those at the same time? Well, one seems to negate the other, but they don't. They actually augment each other. It's a very hard thing to articulate.
Uh, you know, most of us love a humble person. And we talk about how a young man should pay attention to details and be engaged all the time and stay curious. For God's sake, stay curious. And that's what we lose first with any experience at all. We're no longer curious, but by definition, if we're not curious, it kind of means we either don't care or we think we know it all. And it's certainly not the case when we're beginning, but the more experience we get, that I think it applies as well. Because if you're not humble as a leader and the newest kid on the team brings in a new piece of gear and the old dinosaur on the team says, "Put that shit away. That don't belong here. What is that anyway? Ah, grr." Well, most of our children can run circles around us with technology. Most of our children know more about the evolving and changing culture around us than we do. A lot of times they have answers. And if we're not listening and we're no longer curious, then we're never going to be dynamic. And so I think it applies to all of us. And that's only one of the ways I think that humility matters when it comes to leadership and everything else. And it has nothing to do with your capability, because the highest trained person in the world can get their ass kicked. And and look, I'm going to tell you, in today's world, there's a lot of people I meet and they say, "Whoa, you're a Green Beret?" And I prefer for people to find that out rather than me telling them, because I know I'm just Greg and I can't perform to any of those standards now. uh, but they ask me, "Man, why aren't you? I expect you to be cocky and a lot more confident, even a little qualified arrogance." And I'm like, "No, for me, if you've seen the real thing on this earth and in life, if you've been through the real stuff, then you can't help but know how small you are." And
Well, you see that, and I wonder because I didn't know you before you were wounded, and uh, were in the hospital for a year with all the surgeries you've had and all the stuff you went through. What do you like that before being so badly wounded on the field in Afghanistan?
Was I like that?
Yeah, where you what you just said. I mean, being humble and not. Did you have more of an arrogance before you were almost killed and then managed to live? Did you learn that humble that you're the manly humbleness that you're showing right now that I've always admired in you? I'm wondering how much of that came out of the adversity of the near death experience you went through, maybe a series of near death experiences you went through after being so badly wounded in Afghanistan.
Most of it. Most of it. Because as I talk about what young men should do, a lot of it is stuff I didn't do. And the attitude, the lack of humility. And it may not be that you're not humble. It may be that you just don't want to show weakness. And you'd rather pose with arrogance than have someone see what your weakness or your failing is. And I was guilty of that, for sure. But when all my training, when all my physical capabilities went away in one moment, and now I've got people wiping my butt for me in the hospital, nobody trained me how to do that. And the only things I was left with, the only things that could help me survive then were the things I'd never developed. I'd never worked on them because I would never admit that I needed help.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's better to develop these psychological things, these mental things, these spiritual things. And don't be ashamed of any of it because, look, you're a man of history, Frank. And I can't quote the things that you do, but I know that from the beginning of mankind, the best warriors were mixing in art and philosophy, and it made them better and fierce warriors. They had a focus and a better comprehension of the world around them.
My copy of the Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi's, was that 16th century samurai, and in the right in the beginning of it is some art that he did because the Japanese samurai, as strong as they were, would be into tea ceremony and flower arrangement and painting. He was into painting and just beautiful Japanese art that he painted, very delicate flowers and reeds with little birds and things. It's just gorgeous stuff that you wouldn't imagine a tough guy, samurai, back in that age would have done. But right, they were well-rounded warriors.
Yep. So I think it matters to be honest to ourselves and be honest with each other. And on that note, I see a correlation with suicide among warfighters after retirement. I do. I think a lot of it is connected to the fact that even though it may be an emotional decision to serve and to fight and to endure, it's very emotional, isn't it? You have to be passionate about what you believe in and what you're willing to give it all to protect. But even though it's an emotional decision, when you go to work, you better put that fucking emotion in the wall locker because it doesn't belong here. And so we condition each other to not show emotion, and we feign strength in moments where really we could be reinforcing each other. So I think
find
it's a mistake.
Stoicism I find to be really misunderstood today because stoicism is holding those emotions back in that moment. When if you lose it, if you lose your shit right then, everyone, you're not going to be a benefit in the situation, and you may even get people hurt. I think it's given a bad name today. It's called, it's treated as toxic masculinity, being stoic, but there is a lot more nuance to it. Being stoic, you're not emotionless, but you are able to repress your emotions for a certain amount of time. But hopefully, you're still in touch with them. You're still thinking about them. They're still there. Because if you're not afraid or whatever, you're just going to put yourself into a more of a dire situation. That would be my thinking.
No, I see exactly what you're saying, and stoicism has great value, but you say repress the emotions, and I say manage the emotions, but you cannot. So to me these days, I equate emotion with risk, because we should deal with both of them in similar ways. We should acknowledge that you can never fully eliminate risk. If you're going to leave your house, there are risks involved. If you're going to do any kind of advanced thing, there's risk involved. So what do? We assess that risk. It might impact our course of action development in order to manage and mitigate that risk, but we should know that we can never eliminate it. Now, emotions, I believe, are the same. We can mitigate and manage those and assess them, but we can never eliminate them. And I think the only effective stoicism comes from management and acknowledgement of those emotions first, and then carry yourself in a way as you manage them that can influence others to manage theirs too.
I agree. Manage is a better way to put it. I agree with that. I got to ask G. Gordon Liddy once, interviewed him once on a topic similar to this, facing his fears, which he became very famous for. That, his I think he was actually on Fear Factor, and they couldn't make that guy flinch. It was annoying to them. They kept throwing things at him, and he just, whatever, I'll sit in this pile of leeches or whatever they threw him into. I forget what exactly he had to go through. But he told me that facing a fear over and over again, it does reduce the power of the fear. You can control it. He said, but the fear of it never goes away. I mean, you become a totally irrational person if it ever went away completely, because then you'd actually get harmed by it. You have to keep a certain amount of the fear, and you will, but you can diminish it by facing it over time. And it'd be the same way you're talking about. That's managing it.
It is, and I think a failure to manage emotions that are very real for all of us, if we don't manage them properly, they come back to haunt us. I believe we either deal with emotions or they come back to deal with us. And I know retirees that have been through the worst war fighting you can imagine, and they're committing suicide in vast numbers. And from their friends and family and teammates that I've talked to, there's a common thread among these men committing suicide after they retire. And isn't it odd that if I can just make it through this career, everything will be easy? Right? But no, I
Yeah.
thought the same thing when I graduated high school. I'll be an adult and everyone will respect me then. It'll be easy. Or if I can just get out of basic training, everything will be easy. I'll be a soldier then. No, it never does get easy. Then you go to combat and you say to yourself, if I can just make it through this, nothing will be difficult again. And you get wounded and you're in the hospital. If I can just get out of this hospital bed, if I can learn to walk, if I can get out of the hospital, everything will be a cakewalk after this. Nope, it's not going to get easy. It's
I thought
still
that when
going
I
to
was a kid
suck.
too. Yeah. I'm 53 now, so I've learned a few things, I hope. And one thing is not to do that. And in fact, what I tell myself is, what fun would it be if it was easy? You know, I need my challenges. I still do. If I don't have challenges, I'm bored, and I don't like being bored. You know.
Yeah, and so I believe that these men, there's a common quote that I hear, something a lot of them say or were heard saying, that they broke down and cried and they were with people at the time, or they were all by themselves. And either way, this is what they say: I broke down and cried for no reason. They actually say for no reason. And think of the cumulative effect of these traumas and the adversity and repressing emotion for that amount of time, trying to act like it doesn't apply to you, is a facade. Because now we're older, and now we actually enjoy watching a sunset, and we'll actually set aside time for that. Come on, man, that's kind of queer, okay? And then I sit there and stare at a harbor here in Maine, and I'm looking at the lobster boats and the sailboats, and I never would have done that. So things are getting softer to me, and I'm gaining perspective on the memories I have that I look back on. And I'm even starting to like children a little bit. That's weird.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
other people's kids.
I
So,
have a hard
so
time not liking any kid I meet, to tell you the truth.
I
Parents, not
know,
always. I like all the
I
kids.
know,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of years where I didn't have time for kids. I didn't have time for that. I got big boy stuff I'm doing, and 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 now things are different. My perspective is changing. So I have to be honest that I hurt a little bit when I think about some experiences that I had, and it's in a different way because now I have the time. I don't have that next mission focus ahead. I don't have that next assignment ahead. I'm on a different pace now. And my age reminds me of that every day. So it's important that we do touch base with how we feel about things and process it. And men are just, oh, we're so afraid to cry. But tears, what does it take to make you cry? And the answer for most men, it better be serious. It better be this. But I cry watching a Disney movie now. But wait, I don't watch those anymore.
There's sappy movies I'll cry. I will. I can't hide it from my wife a little bit, but no, it happens 100%. And I think it's healthy. I wouldn't want to cry in a serious situation when I had to take care of something. And I've never felt emotion like that in those situations.
That's right.
Right.
So
Right.
so tears have always been misunderstood. And look, you mentioned losing your shit. That's something different than feeling emotion. That's acting out. That's a lack of composure, and that is not the management of your emotions at all. And that's what we fear is the loss of respect because we become ineffective.
I found that what people fear most is the unknown. They're not sure how they're going to be treated, how this is going to go. And I found that running with the bulls until I understood what was going to happen and where I should go and how it should work. I was afraid of it. Of course, the first time I ran, but you get used to it and you figure it out. And once you figure it out, you respect it. You realize you can get hurt, but you're not as afraid as you were. You can control that fear because you understand that it's no longer an unknown.
Yeah,
And I found that with everything. If I face it
yeah,
enough, yeah.
yeah. But remember also that emotion is a driver. It drives us to do what we do or not do what we choose not to do. And if you've ever been in a fight with someone who was crying first, now you know to run away next time because they're going to whoop your ass. They got skin in the game and we don't even know what it is. And you can't fight that with Queen's rules and white gloves.
I don't know where to go with that one, Greg. Fight with someone who's been crying. That one you lost me. I was trying to find something to go with. I don't know where to go.
I think President Lincoln said, let me pull this up, man. When it comes to tears, because I witnessed my own commander in Special Forces shed tears. And he did it over my condition, and he did it over my toddler son, who at that time they believed would never have a, quote, normal father to throw a ball with in the yard again. And that was a heavy impact because though I'd been through so much bad stuff, I didn't own those consequences because I didn't make the decisions to be there. I didn't make that plan. And I won't have to wonder for the rest of my life, could I have done it differently to prevent that? Um, and so that perplexed me about the whole tears thing because they'd never been really appropriate in any lane within the special forces, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
wouldn't think so. Yeah,
but
yeah.
President Lincoln said this about tears. No, it was said about President Lincoln because, as you know, there have been generals alongside a battlefield after it was over that would pray and they were found to shed tears. And it was journaled by so many Civil War, Revolutionary War soldiers. And how did that make the soldier feel about their commander? Did they say, oh, what a wuss? No, it was the only evidence they had that that commander, that general was human also, and that they cared and they loved their people and they felt that pain. And so I'd much rather see that expression of emotion than to have a detached robot that maybe doesn't care that much.
Yeah, I could see hating a guy that was too robotic. Yeah, he was just too aloof, too didn't care if you lived or died, kind of thing. I could see, even as a boss, he didn't have to be on the battlefield, just loathing a person like that.
Yeah, and so we all know that President Lincoln, he felt the weight of the death and dying, the destruction. And Washington Irving wrote this. He said that it was said of Lincoln that on occasion he was seen to weep in a way that made weeping appropriate, decent, majestic. There's sacredness to tears. They're not a mark of weakness, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They're the messengers of overwhelming grief, deep contrition, and unspeakable love. And many times when it gets too tough to talk, our words are replaced by tears and we want to hide them. Sometimes we should realize it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, all based on
Now,
context. Yeah.
leading troops into into combat, maybe not.
No,
Uh,
no.
that's where the stoicism comes in, and men should be able to apply that to take care of business when others fall by the wayside.
But if a man is kneeling at the grave of a fallen soldier that he served beside, and he doesn't shed a tear, yeah, it does feel really there's something wrong, and you actually worry about that soldier who can't. They're
Absolutely.
pressing too much. Yeah, not healthy.
Yeah. And I don't, yeah, I'm sorry if I sidetracked this whole thing.
No,
That's
this is
just where
all
my,
important nuance to the growing character. You talk about conquer anything. How do you build that team? And this is a part of being honest with that team in order to grow them. Communicating appropriately is another part that you talk about. I think you said that no communication, no team, because they'll grow dissent if they don't know what's going on, and that's something I've applied as a manager, as an editor in chief of a magazine. I bought that in and made sure that they knew what was going on, even to the point where maybe I overtold what was going on because I wanted them to be a part of this shared experience. It is so critical. Now, there's so
yeah.
much in Conquer Anything. Well, let's bring
Well,
it back for full circle now, if you don't mind. We started talking about what you would say to a young man. Now, let's say that young man is listening to us, two old guys here blather now for about 45 minutes of this. Um, what do you hope he's learned from this? What are you hoping that he drives toward after hearing this?
um,
No easy,
honorable behavior. What?
no easy questions for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, it's right where I started. Let there be honor in the things you do, and do honorable things, because our time on earth is going to end, and a lot of people have to question and wonder, did they make a difference in their life? But if you decide each day to live in a virtuous way, in an honorable way, to show courtesy, to express love, to let the words be said, tell the truth, um, don't piss on the floor in the public restroom. There's so many little things that we can do every day, and that is where it starts. Just hold true to that, because I've been amazed in my life, and my ego got pretty big. When you have a couple decades as a Green Beret, everybody looks up to you. Everybody describes you as someone who can kill you 40 ways with their bare hands. And that's all bullshit. You know, but if you drink that Kool-Aid and let it go to your head, um, then you're living a false life. And I actually had that chip on my shoulder. But since I've retired, I see people around me every day that could have easily done what I did. They just chose to do something different. And I've got evidence of that, as you know. You know, the mechanic that wound up in the fight with us. I mean, who'd have guessed? He was locked down in battle with us. He was never trained to fight. He had no experience, but he was shooting and moving and communicating the same as us after 3 days. Uh, there are people like that all around us, and it's because they live in a way that's honorable and focused, able to apply yourself, even when it's not your chosen environment.
I think I would tell that young man not to be afraid to fail. And I'm hoping that's what my son is learning because I speak to so many who they're telling me, to get through that door they want to get through, I've got to do all this kind of things. I'm like, yeah, okay, but you got to push forward through those things, and that might not be the door you want to go through. You might find other passageways as you go there. You don't know what windows or doors are going to open to you. If you just focus on that one thing way in the future, you're probably not going to get there. So don't be afraid to fail now. Step forward and take things on and see where it leads you, because life is interesting. You really don't know where you're going to go.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Failure is the only basis for true improvement. And I agree with the comment. I've always heard it said in a big manly way. Failure is not an option. And I agree with that phrase, but my premise is different. Failure is not an option. It's a constant as long as we're human. Yeah. So where's our PACE plan? Where's your primary, your alternate, your contingent, and emergency plans? We can't be one and done, and we have to be humble enough to face the music and get through it. And I get tired of zero defects older guys like us that want to look at young men and fault them for making a mistake, acting like they never made one. What kind of rose-colored glasses are we wearing to think that we were so awesome when we were young? How could a young guy know the things that we know, and why would we ever expect that? So if we want to make a difference, we got to be in the business of putting ourselves out of business and share everything we know with them. Admit some of our failures so they can understand that even a role model for them, an example of what a work ethic might look like in their workplace, actually got there, but they made some mistakes along the way. And if I'm honest, there were people, superiors, that could have fired me for the stupid shit I did, but they didn't. They gave me a chance. They counseled me. They mentored me through it and gave me a chance to do it better and soldier my way out. And I have to tell you, Frank, I know for a fact that I'm better now for having made those mistakes, better than other people that didn't make the mistakes, because it's embedded in my consciousness. I can almost see and feel the consequences. But the people that haven't been through that and haven't made that mistake, they're not going to factor that in to what they do.
Yeah, it feels like a part of this generation now just doesn't have the role models and isn't told to step forward and fight for what they want and really head towards not just a dream but to failure, to failure that leads to success. Where success is, you're always going to fail. I don't feel like that the gauntlets are there for them, or they don't realize they're there for them. They sure are there for them. They don't realize they're there for them, and that generation then is just sitting easy and not growing, and they're staying kind of socially awkward and in their parents' basements, maybe to use a cliche, but they're just not stepping out there and becoming who they'd really like to become, and that fulfillment that comes from that. Trust me, guys, it's worth it.
I agree, and I think one of the things that I see happening is that failure turns people into victims. Woe is me. I tried my best and I did this and I did that and I still didn't get it right. Well, where does that lead? If you become a victim, anything we volunteer to do, we've disqualified ourselves from being victims.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Thomas Edison said, failure is what he wants, because now he knows, now he's learned something. He says, I learned nothing from success, failure. Now I've learned something. It's Thomas Edison. God bless him.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a painful process, but my goodness, it sure makes us better and it sure makes us tougher. And that's what I'd like to see is more mental toughness. I want to see more grit out there,
Hmm.
and more personal accountability. Let's not let's not blame somebody else for everything. And part of this, we're so polarized in society today, and everyone wants to blame an elected or appointed leader. But no elected or appointed leader has ever mandated how we treat each other. And this is where it starts. I mean, my hat says we the people, right? This is where it starts. How are we living, and are we leading upward with a culture that has to be represented by those elected officials?
Yeah, well said. Well, thank you, Greg. This has been an awesome conversation, and I hope we have more because there's so much more we need to explore. And having your wisdom come to the heroic gent is just amazing.
Well, anytime, Frank. You've been a friend and a mentor to me. You've helped me a lot, and I appreciate you. And I agree with what you're trying to do with Heroic Gents. I agree with your Ultimate Man's Guide to Survival. I agree with so much. There's something missing as we try to dodge the bullet that we're calling toxic masculinity.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're
No,
calling it that, Greg, but yes, there are people out there accusing us of that, which is ridiculous.
here,
Right.
here.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Frank.